the Dream 100 Show. The epicenter of influence, collaboration, and exponential growth. You're about to discover the power of relationships. Dream 100 relationships. And you're one relationship away from a totally different business and life. This is your host, Michael Tasner.
Mass consolidation as well as mass exodus. In today's episode of the Dream 100 Show, I'm going to continue talking about trends that I am seeing across the entrepreneurial community, the marketing community, the small biz community that I want you to be on top of. In today's episode, I'm going to go through what I am seeing with consolidation. And I want to talk about a couple of different strategies, a couple of different things for you to think about. And most importantly, I'm hoping that I can sway you and teach you as to why you want to kind of lean towards one of these. So let's start at the highest of level and talk about what I'm seeing that's happening day in and day out. So the easy trend to talk about is the baby boomers that are retiring, closing their businesses, hoping to sell, trying to give them to their kids or grandkids, and often they're flopping. This isn't a surprise trend. This is one that there are a couple of so-called gurus that are talking about day in and day out, where they're talking about these main street businesses, and they want you to buy boring businesses, as they might call it. Now, it's not that I don't like this strategy. I do, but I want to bring you stuff that, okay, well, what else? Like, what is causing this? What leads up to it? And what do I actually need to then execute to be on the receiving end of some really great momentum? So there's this Main Street business stuff that's going on. But what I'm also seeing are a lot of deals that are being done in all different industries on kind of mass consolidation. So I'm seeing a lot of smaller businesses that either join forces with a bigger company, or they do end up selling to a similar company in that industry. Now, there's some industries that this has been common practice, and it's happening all day, every day. Funeral homes, for example, are often owned by one of a few investment groups. Child care centers are getting bought up by private equity companies, and they're trying to hold a lot of these one-off locations and then roll them up and do some mass consolidation. I'm seeing this in lawn care, I'm seeing it in e-commerce, which I'm going to circle back to, but I'm definitely starting to see this happening a lot more. Whereas people would maybe just cash in their chips. Great, I'm done, I'm going to fold my hand and go on their merry way. I'm seeing a lot more joint venture relationships, strategic partnerships, but where they end up joining with a bigger company so they have more resources and they can start to take out some of the little guys and or kind of have those little guys and gals end up kind of joining forces. But what's really pushing this does go back to a lot of business owners are just, they're exhausted. Like they're just physically and mentally exhausted. Like, well, Michael, I've been doing this for so long. And some of those do fit in. Again, that boring business and people that have had a family business for 50 years. I get it. Those are a lot of them. But I'm also just seeing this point of exhaustion hitting people that are in their 30s and 40s, not just people that have been doing this for 50 years and they're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s and they want to kind of cash out. And what ends up happening is they're folding too early. They're cashing in, and they're doing that because either they don't see a way out, they don't know a better path, they can't kind of get themselves out of a rut that they're in. I just saw this with the local business. I don't believe that he wanted to sell the business, but he had dug himself in a pretty big hole from a debt standpoint. He had an offer, but it was a shark offer, and he felt like he didn't have any other options. So he walked away from a business that he built from 0 to 7+ figures, built it from scratch into a nice brand, and essentially ended up giving it away so that he could pay off some debt service and now start over. If you're in this path, if you're in this mindset to where you're thinking of kind of folding the towel and trying to get whatever you can, I can tell you that I've been there. It is one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my career. And I'm not saying that if you're miserable, you're that you shouldn't look at going down this path, but I want you to pause. And I want you to think, if you're like, I want to get out 100%, then what I want you to do for the next 6 to 12 months is bury your head, ignore everything else, and focus on 2 things. Number 1, your financials / your profits. Slash a bunch of stuff that's unnecessary, run ridiculously clean books, like your financials, your profit and loss balance sheet. Don't have all these owner expenses that you're running through, run it extremely clean. Number 2, get it to a place where you don't have to work. You're still making some money, profits are decent and or good, but you don't have to work. And then I want you to make a decision. Does it still make sense now that you've got it to a place where you're making more money, but you're not having to be a slave to the business? Does it still make sense for you to fold your cards and cash in your chips? And a lot of times the answer is no. I wanted to work less. I didn't want to give up the business, but I couldn't figure out how to get myself out of it. And that's where I was. And what unfortunately ended up happening was I took a shark deal that I didn't realize at the time was a shark deal. I got a very low 6-figure check when it should have been a low 7-figure check because I couldn't find a way out of my 70, 80-hour work weeks. I didn't have the knowledge, the skills, I didn't have the right coaches, mentors, team around me, but I just, moment of weakness, okay, I'm done. I wish I would have paused and engaged some experts and really turned things around because I probably never would have sold the business. That's 1. And number 2, if you're like, okay, I'm working less or not even at all now, I'm making more money, but I still want out. Well, now your business is worth a lot more money. You've got healthier profits and you're not having to be in the business. Your valuation, that fancy amount of exit money now is, I wouldn't say skyrocketing, but it's going to be a lot more than it would have been 6 or 12 months before. So that's one side of the equation. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is that if you're at this place where you're like, I want to retire, I still want you to do that exact exercise and see, does it still make sense for you to quote unquote retire? And so I'm like, I just want to be done. And then do what? And that's a scary thing to think about. I always used to think that I wanted to retire early. I wrote in my yearbook that I think I wanted to retire by 30, and then it was 40, and I'm just passing 40, or just past 40 rather. I don't have any intention of retiring. If I'm enjoying what I'm doing, if I'm making an impact, if I'm making modest to good money, and I'm like, why would it make sense to retire? Because unfortunately what I'm seeing, and I'm in no way a medical expert, is the science behind people that retire and start moving to sitting on the couch and watching Netflix all the time and not using their brain is that their risk of dementia and Parkinson's and all these things go through the roof. So I would encourage you to look at how you could get the business operating in a better spot so that you don't necessarily have to be a slave to that business. So if I circle back to this consolidation, some might call it also a mass exodus, people closing up left and right. E-commerce businesses, I promise you I'd circle back, are closing all day, every day now due to tariffs. So where does this present an opportunity? And that is where I want to focus the remainder of the time on today. What if you could double, triple, quadruple, 10x your business in the next year or 2 through acquisition? I am seeing some of the best deals that I have ever seen in my career. E-commerce companies that used to have gigantic multiples. So if it was $1 million in sales and $500,000 in profit, they might ask for a 10x multiple and say they want $5 million. Some of those are going for 1x multiple or 2x because there's so much uncertainty. Now, my asterisk to all of this is you need to invest in your own risk. If tariffs skyrocket, there's a lot of unknowns right now. But if you like a little bit of risk, this is when I want you to start getting, there's a phrase, what is it, like, when everyone's fearful, I want you to be doing the opposite. Everyone's worried about the economy. People are saying next year is going to be the worst economy in history. That'll be an even better time to keep acquiring companies. What I love about acquisition is right now the SBA is loaning up to 100% on businesses under $5 million. If the business that you're looking at buying has healthy profits, you can literally get up to 100% of a loan, where you can buy a $5 million business with zero out of your pocket. Zero. So if you know that this trend is happening, if you know that people are nervous, they're fearful, they are stuck in ruts, how do you take action on that? Now, unfortunately, going to places like Biz Buy Sell and some of these other kind of business brokers that are like the generalized ones, often it's too late. The other interesting stat is that it's like 10% of businesses that have a broker end up selling. I want you to start getting ahead of the curve and getting your name out there as we speak. So what does that look like? Very, very simple. I want you to start with the first thing that I had said. I want you to get your business healthier. I want to make sure your margins are good. I want your financials to be clean. I don't want you to have to be working 80 hours. I want you to fall in love again with your business. And then start to strategically look at what acquisitions would make sense. What acquisitions could you roll up? The data is very, very interesting. If you have a $1 million company and then you buy a few more companies and get to $10 million, the deal sizes, they become so much more amazing. So example, let's say simple math. You do $1 million in revenue and you do $200,000 in EBITDA or profit. And depending on the industry, it's called a multiple, but let's just use simple math and say we're going to do like a 2.5x. So we might say, great, your business is worth 2.5x of your current cash, so we're going to give you a $500,000 valuation. Let's say that you have $10 million in sales. You might say, okay, great, so if the numbers are consistent, isn't it just 10 times that number that that 500,000? So I'd be ideally getting a $5 million exit. The interesting thing is that it's usually that multiple goes up because bigger businesses like to buy those bigger businesses. They're willing to pay more for bigger companies. And it's not just they're willing to pay more because you're larger in revenue, but they want the scale. Like, even if the profits aren't as healthy, they want to keep adding and growing themselves. So they aggressively buy up in certain categories. A lot more buyers actually are at the bigger deal sizes. So you do this by getting scrappy and going guerrilla style marketing. You go Dream 100 style marketing. You identify 100 businesses that you would want to target. And you look at this and you craft a letter that's personal to that business owner. Shows that you've done the research. You talk about your story as well. I own a landscaping business. I've had it for 30 years. My kids work there. I love working in the community. I know that you have a landscaping business that's been in the family for 50 years. I'm versed in your family and these fun charity things so you show that you've done your research, and you do the research. And then you say something like, if it ever makes sense to look at collaborating, partnering, or even if you ever wanted to sell at some point, here's my direct cell phone number. And you send it off, and then you do the next one, and the next one. And you look at doing 20 to 25 of these a month for the next 4 months. And what will end up happening is, with the law of averages and the law of numbers, some of these are going to start to hit. Might be 3 months later, 6 months later, 2 years later. I've had people call me 5 or 7 years later from a letter that I've sent. This is the old school tactic that works really well in real estate. Hey, I'm looking at buying up real estate. Well, people save these letters. And sending it FedEx or UPS shows that you're serious. You put some money behind it. And then you do the same thing that I teach you with the Dream 100, is you keep nurturing that relationship. You might send an article via FedEx and say, I thought of you, here's an interesting article on the landscaping industry. and you continue to massage that relationship, and you'll find that if and when they're ready to sell, they're going to call you. They're going to skip the business brokers, they're going to skip these gigantic private equity firms, and they're going to call you because you reached out personally and you kept nudging them and building the relationship. The same strategy that I've taught you is the best strategy to deploy right now by leveraging the Dream 100 framework. This is your time to strike. If you have some capital, if you have a little bit of an appetite for risk, I want you to start looking at who are my acquisition targets and start to get these letters out this year. This is one of those that in the next couple of years, you'll be writing me letters thanking me, emails, letters, whatever. Maybe a big fat check of saying, Michael, I did this. Here's what it did for me and my family. Thank you ever so much. I want you to win, and this is a strategy that can help you do it. Tune in next week. It's Michael Tasner signing off. Good morning, good afternoon, and